Welcome to Humane Voices, the official podcast of Humane World for Animals. I'm Chad, and there's Kelly. What's up, Kelly?
Hey, good to be with you, Chad.
Yeah, man, this is a good one today. So we've got some science people who are super smart, and we're talking today about an issue that people probably don't even realize is still happening in the world. Testing on animals, research situations. Anyway, our science people are going to straighten us out here. Our two expert guests represent teams who are working around the globe to replace cruel, outdated animal experiments with innovative non-animal methods. Our two guests are Kathleen Connolly, Vice President of Animal Research Issues at Humane World for Animals, and Kate Willett, Senior Managing Director on the Research and Toxicology team at Humane World for Animals. Welcome to the show, you guys.
Thanks for having me.
So just kicking us off, like for listeners that might not know, maybe explain what kinds of research animals are still being used. I mean, is it just one kind of animal or is it a whole bunch?
Nearly every animal you can think of, unfortunately, used in laboratories: mice, rats, fish, dogs, monkeys, guinea pigs, gerbils, hamsters, and the list goes on.
Good Lord.
So, Kate, well, how widespread is this globally?
So basically every country tests on animals.
Oh my gosh.
They have the capacity to do research. They probably test on animals.
Well, this is the good news podcast, you guys. Tons of animals, and every country in the free world are testing on animals.
Yep.
And we should probably clarify that when we say testing on animals, we kind of use that loosely to capture both research and testing. So when we talk about testing, we talk about products, the safety of products such as cosmetics, pesticides, chemicals, food additives, drugs, medical devices. Nearly every product that we use in our lives tested on animals. And then research captures things like infectious disease or psychology or neurology, even studying basically how the body works. So any range of animal use that you can think of.
And that's more, so one of the pieces there, you're talking about like the university and college level, like places like that, they're doing stuff?
Yes, a lot of universities and colleges get grants from the government, for example, to do research on animals. And then the testing is largely for product sectors. So more so private actors, but the universities can also do some of that early stage testing that ultimately becomes in the private sector.
But it's not all doom and gloom, because there is some progress happening, right? And so there's been some bans and restrictions put in place. Kate, speak a little bit about that.
Sure. So particularly for cosmetics, there's been in the past 10 or 12 years, a number of restrictions on either sales or testing of cosmetics that have been tested on animals, which has really spurred the development of non-animal methods for cosmetic safety testing. And in that area, it's quite possible now to do a full safety assessment without the need for any new animal testing. And that has been just remarkable to see. And it's really spurred the development of these technologies that can then apply to other sectors besides cosmetics.
So what's bringing about these? I assume it's not just randomly happening. I mean, is this science? Is it ethics? Is it public opinion? What's bringing these changes about, Kathleen?
So I think it often starts with a groundswell of the public. When the public finds out what's happening, they don't want to see the animals suffer. So they will reach out to politicians to do something. But of course, we can't just, have laws. We do have to start with laws and then see implementation of laws. So like Kate brought up cosmetics, it's the perfect example. In Europe, there was public outcry. They banned cosmetics testing on animals with a phase-in period. And during that phase-in time, the technologies just blossomed, right? There was a reason to feel the pressure to develop these technologies. And now that's built, it's like a snowball. Now we're seeing it helping with those other sectors, like Kate said. So it's a perfect example of public outcry, pass laws, implement laws. We still have a long way to go, but when you look back, we've come pretty far, and now it's just really on a big momentum.
And then, you mentioned public opinion, which makes me think of some of the investigative work that we've done over the years into places to kind of pull back the curtain and show what's going on in these labs. But you guys really have the breadth of knowledge of what's happening with these animals behind closed doors. Can you talk a little bit about that? I have a feeling it's not going to be a lot of fun to talk about, but I think it's
We're like a
important.
roller coaster. We were down, we went up, now we're going
Now
back.
we're down again. Well, if we want to talk about what the animals are experiencing, I'd say if you think about it too hard, it will literally give you nightmares. So in the testing arena, now I just want to clarify that most safety and efficacy testing is required by law. So a lot of the laws specify the types of tests that have to be done. And a lot of these tests involve force feeding an animal, often for its entire life, toxic amounts of chemicals so that they demonstrate some adversity, some kind of sickness. And again, it happens, it can be just for a month, 3 months, a year, or their entire lives. And then the animals are killed and they're, cut up and you see what happened inside. And that's one type, but there's all other kinds of types of experiments. So for medical devices, they implant things into animals and they may surgically damage an animal and then see how it repairs itself. Sometimes they cause a disease in an animal that doesn't normally get the disease, so they can try to cure it. And some of those are pretty awful. I don't know if you heard recently, but there was a sort of expose in Canada where a whistleblower came forward and talked about some experiments in a university lab where they were causing heart attacks in dogs. So they could try to prevent or fix the heart attack. And it's quite gruesome. And, but this is research. This is how research is done. And if you look at basically any, research university in your town, they're doing something like that, most likely. That's that's considered normal.
And that's legal? That's fine?
Oh yeah, you can do anything you want to an animal. You call it research, really.
If you call it research, you can do whatever you want.
Well, there are some limits, right? They have rule books in terms of pain and pain management, but basically, if you justify it scientifically, it almost always gets approved.
Wow.
Well, and even safety rules, I mean, there has to be an enforcement component. And I would guess it's not like there's, people that are in charge of making sure all the rules are being followed.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, there's not that many inspectors when it comes to it, and they rarely actually inspect. And if they do, in my experience, they announce well in advance when they're coming. And it's not often about that. It's that if you can somehow justify an experiment as having a possibility of one day having some kind of ability to help a human disease, then you can justify almost anything, no matter how slim that chance might be.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So, yeah, as you can see, we're trying to transform a whole industry, right? For decades, animals have been used in this way. So we're working on incremental changes. So, Kelly, you were saying what are the advances we've been making, and we've been having these bans and eliminating certain tests. So there are some cases where we say, okay, well, you're using 2 or 3 species. Do you have to use 2 or 3? Can you use 1? Can we replace one of them with a non-animal method? So at least reducing the animals down, but then at the same time trying to transform the entire system. Like tens of billions of dollars are spent on using animals in laboratories every year. What if we took even a fraction of that? We want all of it, but even some of that money to develop and use those non-animal methods. Imagine where we'd be. So with that small amount we've been getting, tremendous progress has been made, but we need to continue to increase that investment.
So I know you said that pretty much every country this is occurring, but are there countries that are looking at their laws or are working towards change that maybe stand out that are, looking to be leaders in this space?
Yes, I mean, again, the EU is really they've led in terms of investment in non-animal methods. By now, they put hundreds of millions, if not over €1 billion, into the development of non-animal methods through their framework programs over the years. And they are trying to advance their legislation, although I would say their chemicals legislation is among the most onerous in terms of required animal testing. But they are trying to make progress. And again, here, the public opinion helped quite a lot, while at the same time, the U.S. has also been on the forefront in terms of implementing non-animal methods.
So let's talk about that. You mentioned alternatives, and this is either Kate or Kathleen. If there's alternatives to animal testing, I mean, are we seeing some advances there? Speak a little bit about that, because I think, you hear maybe, well, we're going to cure cancer with testing on animals, and that's kind of a myth out there. But it sounds like there are alternatives.
Yes, there are some, and it turns out that these methods, these non-animal methods, I mean, we're trying to move away from the idea of alternatives because the non-animal methods really should be the gold standard, right? They're not really an alternative. They're actually, in many situations, almost all situations, a better way of doing the science. And it turns out for endpoints where you can compare the non-animal method and the human outcome, the non-animal methods outperform the animal methods in terms of predicting the human outcome.
But is it just because we've been doing this for decades and we're kind of in a rut? Is that part of it?
Well, we're used to it, right? And also it's kind of, I think people trust things for strange reasons, not necessarily for logical reasons or for information-based reasons, but they just trust them because their gut tells them that if it hurts my dog or it hurts a rat, then it will hurt me. But it turns out when it comes to chemical safety, that is absolutely not true because it's the small differences between our species and sometimes between individuals that make a really big difference in your response to chemical exposure. So you need to understand the biology of the species you're dealing with to really be able to predict. And the non-animal methods are more based on an understanding of the biology, the human biology.
So in lay terms, Kathleen, that would be the non-animal testing can be more accurate and more scientifically, I'm not a science person, scientifically valid. I don't know how we'd say that, but I think listeners would be interested in hearing that.
Yeah, scientifically accurate. So there's a high failure rate when relying on animal results. It's estimated 90% of drugs ultimately fail in humans after being tested on animals. I mean, not solely because of the animal test, but largely because the animal tests don't predict what's going to happen in humans. So I don't think anyone believes 90% failure rate is okay, and that we should be doing better. There was a study that showed an organ on a chip had 87% accuracy versus 90% failure in the animals. So I think, if someone tells you it's between the child and the dog, that's absolutely false. We can save the dog and the child at the same time.
Well, so something related to this a little bit. I remember when the organization Humane World for Animals saved those 4,000 beagles out of a breeding lab that was related to what we're talking about. But that's an industry outside of, somebody's got to produce these animals for these tests, right? Is that right? Can you talk about, there's a whole nother industry around this industry?
Yeah, the animals, there are companies that breed animals for use in laboratories. So those 4,000 dogs were going to be sent to laboratories if there was not an intervention and they were not taken out of that laboratory and that laboratory shut down or that breeding facility shut down. There is a facility in New York that has 25,000
Oh my
dogs,
gosh.
which people were like, wow, 4,000 dogs. And yeah, well, multiply that by 5 and you'll have another, facility in the country. So, but we need to get to the root cause. We need to stop the need for, breeding these animals. So it's the same thing with mouse colonies, ferret colonies. There's 55,000 ferrets at one facility.
Oh my gosh.
Hundreds of thousands of mice and rats. So we do need to get to the root cause.
Wow.
Yep, and there's also a potential, I mean, on the upside, there's a huge economic potential in the non-animal technology development. So organs on a chip, cell cultures, computer program stuff, predictive computers, AI, there's a huge market here that's relatively underdeveloped and untapped. So we're trying to affect the growth in the non-animal sector, and assuming that it will result in a balanced decrease in the animal sector over time.
So I
And
mentioned
just
with disease kind of curing, people say, well, we have to test on animals to cure disease. What are some of the common arguments that opponents still use on why we need to test animals? What do you hear from people?
Well, one of them is that you need the whole animal response, that the animal is a whole integrated system, and you can't get that if you're looking at tissues or cells in a tissue culture dish. But using non-animal technologies, you can focus on the biology that's underlying all of that, and you can actually use your understanding of biology to make the connections. You don't necessarily need to recapitulate an animal in a test tube to be able to understand what's going on or predict the outcome.
Well, you guys have both been in this field for a long time, fighting this industry for a long time. Um, can you give us any kind of clue on what's the timeline for getting rid of this thing? Are you guys closing up shop here soon? Are you going to end it, or what are we looking at?
And I think in my lifetime, we can get rid of almost all animal testing for safety of chemicals. Chemicals, pesticides, and a good amount in the drug field.
Wow.
Yeah, hopefully in my lifetime. Yeah. And yeah, in terms of research, it's a little more difficult because you're not really replacing. I mean, your goal is not to replace something here. Your goal is to build a better system and to have people figure out how to use that system.
Well, I like there's some optimism there. Kathleen, when are you going to be out of work? Will this happen in your lifetime? What do you think?
Well, we've always said 2050, which I'm going to try to hold to. That's optimistic. Absolutely. When you look back, there was a toxicity testing in the 21st Century Report in 2007, which had said not too distant future will we see an end to the use of animals, like Kate said, for safety testing. So I'm hopeful that will be sooner rather than later. We do have a lot of work to do, but I do feel like even this past week, hearing from the National Institutes of Health, which is the largest biomedical funder in the world, investing in this infrastructure that we're going to need to make this transformational change. So if we keep making sure that the government invests in it, they have the resources to do it, I think we're going to move faster rather than slower. We can't keep going at the pace we've been going. We've made progress, but we absolutely need to put the foot on the gas and make sure this heads in the right direction.
Well, it sounds like, there is some reason to be hopeful. There is some progress, and I know that there are folks all over the world working on this. I think the public component is so important. So many people don't realize what goes into there, be it household cleaners or cosmetics, or so obviously educate the public. But how do we make sure that people are aware of what's happening?
So we have a Facebook page that our global team uses, and that provides the most timely times you can take action, whether it be a bill somewhere or a regulation what you want you to weigh in on. So that's facebook.com/Humane World End Animal Testing. And I think Kate might have some other ideas as well.
Yeah, so if any of you are on LinkedIn, you can follow what we're doing on LinkedIn, either individually in our department or through. We have a very active collaboration with industry that's called the Animal Free Safety Assessment Collaboration. We have a LinkedIn page where we post all of the stuff that we're working on through AFSA. We also have a website, the AFSAcollaboration.org, that has all the work that we're doing with AFSA there on developing non-animal methods, and also all the regulatory policy stuff that we're doing in different parts of the world.
And as a consumer, the products that are tested, and what can consumers do? What can they look for in products they're buying?
So in the United States, we're part of the Leaping Bunny Coalition, or the Coalition for Consumer Information on Cosmetics, so leapingbunny.org for household products and cosmetics. Some people say, well, I'd like to donate to charities that don't use animals, but unfortunately, it's very difficult to find charities that don't use animals. So that is an area we're hoping to be able to expand, that will have those commitments to not use animals and have a place where people can invest their money, because everyone, wants to see human health improved, have loved ones that we care about with diseases we want to see cured. We just feel there's a better way, and we know there's a better way.
And for many companies in other sectors, the testing's required by law. So you won't find any cruelty-free companies in many sectors, but we're also working to change that. So I think it would be good to just keep following us and sign the petitions that we put out, which will help us change laws and then keep abreast of what's happening in the area.
And I think one more important point is that, there are different laws around the world. So laws differ by country. So if there's a country where multinational companies operating and there's a requirement, even if it's not required in the United States, they might do the test for that country. So we do have to make change throughout the world. It's not just, it can't be done in one place, so it is a comprehensive approach that we need to take. And I think we're uniquely positioned to do that.
Kate and Kathleen, thank you guys so much for joining us. We're going to let you get back to work because you've got a big load in front of you to work on. So
You've got to work yourself out of a job.
Right. We're working as hard as we can on that.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next time on Humane Voices.